You woke up one morning and something had changed. The noise was gone. There was clarity, like the clouds in your mind had been swept aside. You saw your life differently, maybe for the first time. Your habits, your distractions, your excuses, all of it laid bare. You felt powerful, focused, alive. They call it awakening. A moment where the soul catches fire and the body finally listens. But now, that fire is dim. The energy that once felt unstoppable feels distant, like trying to move through water. You wonder, was it all just a phase? Did I lose it? No, you didn't lose anything. What you're experiencing now is the test, the space after awakening, where many return to sleep and few begin to walk. In the beginning, it always feels like fire, a burst of clarity, a wave of energy, the illusion that everything has changed and nothing will pull you back again. This is the nature of awakening. It arrives suddenly like lightning striking a dry tree. You feel lit from within, and for a while you move with purpose, as if you have finally remembered who you are. Your posture changes, your voice becomes still, you see the traps you once fell into. But this is the trick of fire. It gives light briefly, it gives warmth temporarily, it makes you feel like something permanent has happened. But fire on its own is not stable. It flickers, it feeds, and eventually, if there is no wood beneath it, if there is no structure, no fuel, no patience, it collapses into smoke and disappears into the wind. Many people mistake the beginning of the journey for the journey itself. They believe the feeling of awakening is the transformation. But the fire at the start is not the path. It is only the spark. The beginning is never the destination. And yet when the fire fades, as it always does, they believe something has gone wrong. They say, I've lost my motivation. I was doing so well. I was so dispirited. What they do not realize is that this fading is not failure. It is invitation. In a monastery, when we train, we do not rely on fire. We do not seek the feeling of being motivated. The first week of practice is always the loudest. Students come with hunger. They swing the staff with force. They meditate with their backs straight and eyes alert. They think, this is it. I have changed. But then the days repeat. The silence stretches, the body aches. The cold creeps in. The mind begins to whisper, and slowly the fire that once burned becomes a small ember. This is where most turn back, not because they are weak, but because they thought fire was enough. Fire is movement, but it is not structure. Fire is clarity, but it is not consistency. Fire is insight, but it is not integration. You must understand this. The path of mastery is not built upon what you feel in moments of inspiration. It is built on what you do after that feeling fades. What remains when the energy disappears? Who are you without the fire? What happens in the quiet? A candle burns brightly when first lit, but without wax, without a vessel to contain it, it melts away, leaving nothing but smoke. Likewise, your motivation must be poured into form, into habits, into rituals, into stillness. Otherwise it evaporates, no matter how pure the flame. This is why so many fall back into old patterns. Not because they never awakened, but because they never transferred that awakening into their bones. The fire was real, but it was not rooted. It had no earth beneath it. In nature, fire is often followed by stillness. After the wildfire clears the forest, there is a strange, heavy silence. The trees are ash, the soil is warm, there is no rush, there is waiting. And then, slowly, something green begins to return. Life comes back. When your fire fades, do not panic. Do not chase the next spark. Sit down. Inhale, place your hands on the ground and listen. You are not losing your way. You are entering the deeper part of the work, the boring part, the sacred repetition, the daily breath. This is where the monk is born. If you only train when the fire is high, your path will always collapse when the weather shifts. But if you learn to move without needing the fire, if you build your life around the structure, not a spark, then you are no longer dependent on emotion. You become free. The student who survives is not the loudest on the first day. It is the one who continues on the 50th, when no one is watching, when no praise is given, when the silence is long and the air is cold and the fire has gone. This is the truth no one tells you, that the fading of motivation is not a sign of weakness. It is the moment when strength is first possible. So let the fire come, let it teach you, but when it fades, do not chase it. Do not stay still. Begin again, quietly. And know, this is where the real training begins. In the silence of the earth, something stirs. A single seed lies buried beneath layers of cold soil. It does not shout, it does not move with urgency, it does not demand recognition. Yet inside it a quiet pressure builds, not visible from the outside, but undeniable from within. The outer shell begins to split, not because it is weak, but because it can no longer contain what is emerging. This is the first awakening. The seed does not grow because it is forced, it grows because it must, because stillness has prepared it. When a human being awakens, it is much the same. There is a moment when something inside can no longer be denied. The walls we built to survive begin to crack. The identities we clung to for comfort no longer fit. The life we once accepted feels too small. And in that breaking, we think we are rising, we think it is time to move, to act, to bloom. The seed does not rise to the surface immediately. Before it can grow upward, it must first go downward. It sends roots into darkness. It reaches into the unknown. It anchors itself in the quiet before ever tasting the light. This stage is often mistaken for nothingness. The eye sees no progress. The surface appears still, but beneath it, everything is shifting. Foundations are being laid in silence. So it is with you. You awaken. You feel clarity. You begin to imagine a new life, a new discipline, a new purpose. But then, nothing happens. Or so it seems. The old habits don't break as easily as you thought. The clarity becomes clouded by distraction. The energy that once surged in your chest feels dull again. You're not stuck. You're rooting. In the monastery, when we begin training, the outside world disappears. There is no music, no conversation, no entertainment. Just breath, just steps, just practice. Many expect their inner strength to bloom instantly in such a disciplined place. But instead, what rises to the surface is weakness, restlessness, fear. These are not signs of regression. They are the contents of the mind that have always been there, revealed now by silence. This is rooting. The paradox is simple. Before growth becomes visible, it becomes invisible. Before it moves outward, it must move inward. You are building something that the world cannot see yet, something even you cannot fully grasp. To others, you look the same. To yourself, some days you even feel worse. But this is the soil doing its work. The darkness is not punishment, it is preparation. Do not confuse movement with progress. A tree does not rush, a mountain does not sprint. Only the modern mind, trained in urgency, believes stillness is a problem to be solved. But nature does not hurry, and yet everything is accomplished. The seed does not compare itself to the blooming flower. It simply waits, deepens, trusts the process. Sometimes the most profound growth happens in retreat. When the mind lets go of the need to become something, it becomes spacious enough to contain everything. When you stop chasing the next stage, you start to live this one more fully. This waiting is not passive. It is active stillness, the kind of stillness that knows exactly when to move and exactly when to stay. In the early days of transformation, the greatest test is patience. The mind wants to see results. The ego wants evidence. But the path of mastery does not perform for applause. It grows quietly, like roots weaving through rock, silent but unshakable. This is where most people lose faith. Not in the beginning and not at the end, but in this middle ground. In the stretch of days where nothing seems to be changing, where the fire has faded and the bloom has not yet come. But it is in this place, this invisible in-between, where all real power is forged. The seed doesn't choose when to rise. The sun calls it, the rain invites it, but only when it is ready. And readiness cannot be rushed. The same is true for you. If your next stage hasn't arrived yet, it means your roots are not yet deep enough to hold it. A storm will come, and without roots, even the tallest tree will fall. So stay with the stillness, honor the waiting, let your inner world stretch downward before it ever tries to rise. And when the time comes, you will not have to force it. Growth will happen, not with noise, not with effort, but with grace. And no one will see how deeply you had to go just to begin. It's easy to mistake stillness for absence, to believe that because the fire no longer dances at your feet, the journey has ended. But the truth is more subtle. What you call losing motivation is often something else entirely. It is not disappearance, it is deepening. What once lived on the surface now begins to settle into your foundation. And like all things that move from the outside to the inside, it grows quieter. In the early stages of transformation, the experience is loud. You hear the voice of change echoing in your mind. You feel the pulse of new habits in your body. There is adrenaline, conviction. The wind feels like it's always at your back. But all storms pass, even the good ones. And what follows is often confused for failure. You are no longer excited to rise early. You no longer feel the pull to meditate, to train, to study. The things that once felt effortless now require effort. But effort is not wrong. It is sacred. Think of boiling water. At first there is noise, bubbling, movement, movers, kathandabus, musinglet. But the moment the water reaches its highest temperature, it becomes consistent, still boiling, but without the drama. The movement is no longer a display. It is sustained energy. In the same way, your inner transformation is not always going to look like it did at the beginning. It matures, and maturity is quiet. When you train in the monastery, you begin with discipline, yes, but it's also with enthusiasm. The routine is unfamiliar, that alone gives it weight. But after time passes, your legs no longer tremble during horse stance, your breathing no longer shakes when you meditate, your body adapts. Your mind adapts, and something strange happens. You stop feeling like you are changing. But it is in that exact moment that the change becomes real. The mind wants novelty, it craves stimulation, it associates noise with progress. But mastery is not noisy, it is not colorful, it is not exciting, it is precise, it is internal, it is invisible. And for many, that shift from inspiration to integration feels like a loss. But that is only because we have been trained to equate movement with meaning. Real change does not always feel new, it begins to feel like home. You are not broken because your motivation has faded, you are simply being asked to evolve beyond needing it. To move not because you are moved by emotion, but because you are rooted in principle. Because this is now who you are. Not what you feel. A river does not ask each morning whether it wants to flow. It simply flows because that is its nature. When your discipline becomes your nature, when it becomes integrated, you no longer question whether or not you will show up. There is a moment in every path where the flame turns into ash. But in that ash is heat. In that heat is quiet strength. A fire that rages is not sustainable. A fire that simmers, hidden beneath stone, can warm an entire monastery through winter. You are not becoming weaker. You are becoming less dependent on visible sparks. You are learning to live from a deeper source. Many people chase the next high, a new cause, a new challenge, a new reason to be excited. But excitement is not depth. You can skim the surface of 100 lakes and never know what lives at the bottom of one. The work now is not to feel more, it is to hold more. To stay steady even when the emotional winds stop blowing. This is the beginning of mastery, not the peak of it. There are monks who have practiced the same movements for 30 years. Their steps do not change, their routine does not evolve into something spectacular, and yet, in the simplicity of their repetition, they discover the entire universe. Because they are not chasing variety, they are embodying understanding. That is integration, when the lesson leaves the book and becomes the hand, when the insight leaves the mountaintop and becomes the path you walk. So if you find yourself wondering where your fire has gone, look inward. The fire has not left you, it has simply gone deeper. You no longer need to see it, because now you are becoming it. There is a question you must be willing to ask yourself, and ask it honestly without hiding behind your stories, your routines, or your moods. Do you only move when you feel moved? This is the question that separates those who flirt with transformation from those who live it. Because the truth is simple and often uncomfortable. Most people live as slaves to their emotions. They wait to be inspired. They wait to be ready for the perfect alignment of energy and mood before taking action. But discipline, true discipline, is not a child of emotion. It is born of choice, quiet, repeated, deliberate. In the monastery, no one asks you if you feel like training. No one knocks gently and offers encouragement before the gong sounds at 4 a.m. The sun has not yet risen, but the body begins to move. Not because of motivation, but because of a vow. You rise because rising has become part of your nature. And when it becomes nature, it no longer requires negotiation. Western culture celebrates intensity, passion, hustle. But the monk understands something different. Fire is not enough. Passion is fleeting. Emotion is unstable. If you only move when you feel moved, then your life will be dictated by weather. Sunny days you hide, but nature does not stop because the clouds have gathered. The river does not pause to consult the sky. The mountain does not ask permission to stand tall. There is a rhythm in nature, unbuttered by mood, untouched by hesitation. The moon does not forget to rise when it feels tired. The tree does not stop growing because it is uncertain. It simply follows its nature, patiently, season by season, without applause or urgency. So must you. Your practice, whatever it is, training the body, calming the mind, learning a craft, must not be tied to your feelings, Because feelings lie, they twist and turn with sleep, with memory, with sphere, but action rooted in principle stands firm. When you act regardless of how you feel, you begin to build something unshakable inside you. The muscles of your will, the bones of your discipline, and those do not crumble under pressure. The student who only trains when he is inspired will never endure the winter. Because inspiration fades, energy fluctuates, but vows remain. In Zen, we speak not of motivation, but of commitment. Not the kind you say aloud, but the one etched quietly into the choices you make every single day. Whether you feel strong or weak, whether you feel ready or not. When you are no longer a servant to your emotional state, you become dangerous in the best way. Not reactive, not reckless, but deeply steady. Because most people drift and move in the direction of comfort. They look for signs, for signals, for confirmations. But the awakened one moves without needing proof, like a shadow moving through fog, silent, intentional. There is no thunder when the true master begins his day. Only breath, only footsteps, and sometimes even resistance, because he too is human. But the difference is in the response. He does not negotiate with the mind. He does not ask if he feels like it. He bows, he begins, and he trusts that feeling will follow form, not the other way around. You want peace. You want growth. You want awakening. But you still wait for it to feel good. You still wait to be moved. What if the movement is waiting for you? What if everything you seek is hiding behind the very thing you avoid? Consistent action without drama. Some mornings the body is heavy. Some evenings the mind is loud. Some days the silence is unbearable. But the monk moves anyway, not because it is easy, not because it is joyful, but because it is time. Time to move the body, to still the breath, to return to the path. So ask yourself and ask clearly, who are you when the feeling is gone? Who are you when there is no music playing, no audience watching, no motivation pulling you forward? That is where your real self begins. That is where the training becomes real. Not in the emotion, but in the action that rises without it. There is a kind of silence that unsettles most people. Not because it is dangerous, but because it is unfamiliar. The world teaches us to chase sound, speed, stimulation. We are taught that growth must be loud, progress must be visible, and purpose must come with movement. So when the quiet arrives, after the fire, after the sprint, after the clarity, we grow restless. We think we've lost something. But the truth is, we finally entered the part that matters. Stillness is not the end. It is the beginning of power. A blade does not sharpen itself by swinging wildly in the air. It is honed through friction, slow, deliberate, precise. In the same way, your mind does not become clear by constant activity. It becomes clear when you can sit unmoving and still see, when you can listen without reaching for answers, when you can feel without reacting. That stillness, that space between impulses, is the birthplace of something deeper than motivation. In the monastery, we are not impressed by the student who moves quickly. Anyone can run when they are filled with adrenaline. We observe the one who can sit for hours, eyes open, spine erect, breath steady. No need to impress, no urge to escape, just presence. Stillness. The modern mind might call it boring, but in that stillness, we see what lives underneath the noise. We see what the student really is, not who they pretend to be. You do not fuel a fire by constantly fanning it. Eventually, it will burn out. But if you allow the heat to sink into the stone, if you build a chamber around it, that warmth will last through the night. Stillness is that chamber, not empty space, but space with intention, space that holds, space that nourishes. Most people confuse it with emptiness because they have never learned to be with themselves without movement. But the monk knows The moment you stop moving is the moment you start seeing. There is a pond not far from where I train. In the morning it looks like a mirror, completely still. If you stare long enough, you can see the clouds moving in it, the trees bending, a hawk circling far above. But the pond reveals these things only because it is undisturbed. If the surface is constantly rippling, you see nothing clearly. This is how most people live, turning thoughts, busy hands, distracted heart. They think they are progressing because they are moving. But they cannot see, they cannot hear, they cannot know who they are becoming because the water never settles. You must learn to be still, not once a week, not only when things fall apart, but as a practice like breathing. Stillness is not a reaction to chaos. It is the foundation beneath it. It is the invisible strength that keeps you grounded when the world tries to move you. And without it, you will always be at the mercy of external rhythms, emotions, opinions, events. But with it, you become like the mountain, present, rooted, patient, unbothered by weather. Stillness is not the opposite of action. It is what makes meaningful action possible. The archer does not release the arrow while the hand is shaking. He waits, breathes, finds silence within, and only then does he release effortlessly, with full control. The same applies to your life. If you act from noise, you act from truth. So when your fire fades, and the rush is gone, and the days begin to feel quiet, do not panic. You are not falling behind. You are being handed a deeper fuel, a quieter one that lasts longer, reaches further, holds stronger. This is not emptiness, it is preparation. It is presence. And if you can trust the silence long enough, you will find something hidden within it. Not the return of motivation, but something better, something unshakable. The kind of strength that doesn't need to announce itself, because it already knows. There comes a point when you must stop waiting for the world to notice. No one will clap when you rise at dawn. No music will play when you turn off the distraction and sit in silence. No reward will come when you choose the quiet work over the loud avoidance. And yet, this is where the path becomes pure, when it is no longer about being seen, but about being true. The return to discipline is not glamorous, it is not cinematic. It feels at first like humility. But if you sit with it long enough, you'll see it's not humility, it's freedom. The freedom of doing what is right without needing anyone to witness it, of walking forward without checking who's watching, of sweeping the temple floor even when no one will say thank you. Most people think the journey ends when motivation fades, but that's only because their commitment was tied to a feeling, a burst, a wave. When that feeling vanishes, as it always does, they collapse with it. But the one who continues is the one who no longer depends on fireworks to move, the one who understands that the deeper path begins in silence, without applause, without recognition, without certainty. That person is no longer motivated by ego, but by something cleaner. You must understand this. True return happens when you are no longer trying to prove anything, when you are no longer seeking to impress, to post, to announce your return. You just begin again, quietly, steadily, not as someone starting over, but as someone continuing. Continuation itself is the practice. There is a monk I once trained with who had been in silence for over 10 years. No speaking, no social interaction, only breath posture repetition. One day, during temple maintenance, a visitor asked him, "Why do you continue this way? Who even knows what you're doing here?" The monk smiled, placed the broom down and said softly, "I know." Then he bowed and returned to sweeping. The practice was enough. In a world obsessed with validation, that kind of return seems invisible. But that is where its strength lies. If you only return to the path when someone notices, you were never really walking it, you were just performing. But when you return even when no one sees it, when you keep your vows without a spotlight, you become unshakable. Discipline without applause is like water running through rock. It does not ask for permission, it does not make a sound, but over time it carves entire canyons, it shapes mountains, it transforms the hardest elements not with force, but with persistence. When you act like that, you no longer ask, "How long will this take?" You simply begin. The return to the past must be made with empty hands. You carry nothing with you, not your old pride, not your past failures, not even your expectations. You walk again because the path is still here. Waiting. It has always been waiting. Like the breast that never left you, like the ground that still supports your feet, like the sky that asks nothing from you but attention. And so, when the motivation is gone and the spark is quiet and the days feel heavy, return anyway. When the morning feels ordinary and your steps feel slow, return anyway. Because there is no price greater than self-respect, than knowing that you honored what you said you would, that you showed up even when it was hard, that you continued the practice not for applause, but because something inside you had grown still enough to listen. And in that stillness, the path became clear again. Return to the past, not as a gesture of perfection, but as a ritual of remembering. You don't need a sign. You don't need a moment. You just need a step. One quiet step. Then another. No music. No applause. Just your breath and your vow. You came here seeking an answer. Why does the fire fade after awakening? Now you know. 'Cause the fire was never meant to last. It was only meant to light the way. You do not need to burn to be powerful. You do not need to glow to be whole. The mountain does not shine. It simply stands. True transformation does not shout. It does not announce itself. It is quiet. Like breath, like time, like the turning of the seasons. The path after awakening is not a climax. It is a return to the body, to the breath, to the vow you made to yourself long before anyone was watching. Motivation comes and goes like wind through the trees. But presence is eternal. And presence is a choice. You do not have to feel ready. You only have to take the next step. In stillness, in silence, in service to the highest part of yourself. There is a Zen saying, "I ecstasy the laundry." The deepest truths are never glamorous. They are woven into the ordinary, in how you walk, in how you wait, in how you continue. So here is the challenge, spoken with calm and with care. Return to the past. No applause, no spotlight. It's you, the silence, and the next honest step. And when you begin to feel lost again, which you will, do not search for fire. Search for stillness. And remember, what fades was never the goal. Who you become in the absence of it is the real awakening. Bow gently to yourself and walk on